The research vessel Voidseeker shuddered as the main power core failed. Warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson as Chief Researcher Kayla's slender fingers danced across control panels. "Systems failing across all decks," reported Science Officer Minno, his large eyes reflecting the emergency lights. Like all Azkarans, his fragile body wasn't built for crisis. Their species had evolved on a low-gravity world with stable conditions, developing powerful minds but delicate physiques. Kayla looked at her crew, 11 of the brightest minds in Azkaran science. They had ventured farther than any of their kind. Driven by curiosity about a strange stellar anomaly their long-range telescopes had detected. Now that same curiosity might kill them. "Life support will fail in 20 minutes, the ship's computer," announced, its voice eerily calm. Carla made the only decision possible. "Prepare emergency stasis protocols, now." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, despite their fear. Their ship, once a marvel of technology, was now a failing shell in the emptiness between stars. "Stasis pods are cycling up," reported Engineer Tay, her voice trembling slightly. "But without main power, the pods will only operate on emergency. Reserves, how long will that give us?" Kayla asked. Tay hesitated. "Perhaps 10 years at full function. After that, minimal life support only. Our bodies will survive, but our minds—" She didn't need to finish. Extended stasis without proper neural stimulation could leave them as empty shells, alive but hollow. "The distress beacon?" Kayla asked. "Ready to activate on all known frequencies," confirmed Communications Officer Jin. "But we're at least 6 months from the nearest outpost, if anyone even patrols this sector." Carla nodded, feeling the weight of command. "Do it, and prepare the ship's AI for long-term autonomous function. Program it to maintain neural stimulation cycles as long as possible." As the crew finalized preparations, Kayla recorded one final log entry. "This is Chief Researcher Carla of the Azkaran vessel Voidseeker. We've suffered catastrophic system failure while studying the anomaly in Sector 12 Gamma. Crew entering emergency stasis. To anyone who finds this message, we are 12 souls in need. Please help us find our way home." Within the hour, the last of the crew entered their pods. Kayla watched as her people, one by one, closed their eyes. She was last, sliding into the cold embrace of her pod as the ship's systems continued their slow death around her. The pod sealed with a soft hiss. Cold crept through her body as the stasis chemicals entered her bloodstream. Her last conscious thought was of the sky above her homeworld, a sky she might never see again. The Voidseeker fell silent except for the steady pulse of its distress beacon, calling out into the darkness of uncharted space. Years passed. Then decades. Inside her pod, Carla existed in a twilight state between consciousness and oblivion. The ship's AI, following its programming, periodically stimulated her neural pathways. Brief moments of semi-awareness in an endless sea of nothing. In these moments, Carla dreamed. Sometimes of home, of the gleaming spires of the Azkaran Science Academy, where she had once lectured to eager students. Sometimes of the stars, still calling to her with their mysteries. And sometimes of rescue, of unknown ships appearing from the darkness, of friendly voices and helping hands. But always the dreams faded and the darkness returned. The ship drifted through the void, systems failing one by one. The AI prioritized the stasis pods above all else, shutting down non-essential functions to preserve power. First went artificial gravity, then climate control in unoccupied areas, then internal lighting. After 15 years, the first pod began to fail. Science Officer Lian's life signs flickered as his pod struggled to maintain minimal function. The AI diverted power from other systems, buying precious time, but it was only delaying the inevitable. 23 years after the initial failure, half the ship's systems were dead. The AI itself began to degrade, its programming corrupted by power fluctuations and radiation damage. Still, it maintained its primary directive: keep the crew alive, keep Carla's mind from slipping away completely. During one neural stimulation cycle, 31 years into their drift, Carla became aware, enough to understand their situation. The AI shared ship status, the failing pods, the emptiness around them. In that moment of clarity, Carla felt something she had always prided herself on avoiding: pure, primal fear. No one was coming. They would die here, one by one, as their pods failed. Perhaps the last surviving Azkaran would wake briefly, alone in the dark before the end. Sleep, the AI told her as the stimulation cycle ended. Sleep and hope. And so she did, falling back into the void between thoughts, as the Void Seeker continued its silent journey through the stars, its distress call growing weaker with each passing year. The beacon, once broadcasting proudly across all frequencies, now managed only intermittent pulses, brief cries for help in the vastness of space, unheard and unanswered. Until one day, something changed. The AI in its degraded state barely registered the new signal, another ship approaching rapidly. After 37 years of silence, someone had heard their call. The UES Thunderchild limped through the stars, its hull bearing fresh scars from the recent skirmish with Corvashi forces. What had begun as a routine patrol had escalated into a firefight that left 3 crew members dead and the ship's portside weapons array crippled. In the command center, Captain Su-Jin wiped exhaustion from her eyes as she reviewed damage reports. 20 years in the United Earth Navy had carved lines into her face and threaded silver through her dark hair. She'd survived battles that had claimed ships twice as powerful as the Thunderchild, but this latest encounter had been too close for comfort. "Engine status?" she asked, her voice rough from shouting orders during the battle. Lieutenant Ravi looked up from his console. "Running at 60% capacity, Captain. Chief Engineer says we can manage 75 if pushed, but recommends against it." Su-Jin nodded. Their orders were clear: return to Outpost Sierra for repairs and debriefing. No detours, no delays. The border situation was deteriorating by the day. "Captain," called Communications Officer Dae-hyun, his hand pressed to his earpiece. "I'm picking up something unusual." "Corvashi?" Su-Jin asked, tension immediately stiffening her spine. "No, ma'am, it's a distress signal, very faint, coming from Sector 87 Delta." Executive Officer Liu frowned. "That's neutral territory, unmapped." Su-Jin moved to the communications station. "Let me hear it." Dae-hyun routed the signal through the ship's speakers. A faint, regular pattern of pulses filled the command center. "It's automated," he explained. "Been broadcasting for a long time, judging by the degradation. The pattern doesn't match any known human or allied protocols." "Alien," Su-Jin said quietly. "Has to be," Dae-hyun agreed. "And old. Signal analysis suggests it's been active for at least 30 years. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. 30 years, a ghost signal from a long-dead ship. Liu cleared his throat. "Captain, our orders are explicit. Return to Sierra immediately." "I'm aware of our orders, Executive Officer," Su-Jin replied, her eyes still fixed on the signal pattern dancing across the screen. "How far off course would we need to divert?" 2 days at current speed, Ravi answered, "and that's neutral space, technically off-limits without diplomatic clearance." Su-Jin's mind flashed back to another time, another distress call. 6 years. Ago, when she'd commanded the UES Dauntless, a human colony on Procyon 4, under attack by raiders. Her ship had received the call, but followed protocol, waiting for backup before engaging. By the time they arrived, the colony was ash and bodies. 1,500 civilians, 300 of them children. "Plot an intercept course, Lieutenant Ravi," she ordered. Liu stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Captain, with respect, we're in no condition for a rescue operation. We're low on supplies. Medical bay is at capacity with our own wounded, and we have no idea what we'll find out there." "I'm well aware of our situation, Liu." "The Admiralty will have questions." Su-Jin faced him directly. "Then I'll answer them. But I won't ignore a call for help, not again." Understanding flickered in Liu's eyes. He knew about Procyon, everyone in the fleet did. He nodded once and returned to his station. "Course plotted, Captain," Ravi announced. "ETA 19 hours at safe speed." "Make it 16, Su-Jin ordered. "And inform medical to prepare for possible casualties of unknown species." The Thunderchild changed course, its damaged engines pushing harder as it headed toward the mysterious signal. The crew, despite their exhaustion, worked with renewed purpose. This was why most of them had joined Earth's fleet, not just to fight wars, but to reach into the unknown, to help. 16 hours later, Sensor Officer Park's voice broke the tense silence. "Contact ahead, Captain. Visual range in 30 seconds. On." The main view screen, a shape materialized against the backdrop of stars. A vessel, but like none they had ever seen. Its design was elegant, with sweeping lines and delicate protrusions that resembled fins or wings. "Life signs?" Sujin asked. Medical Officer Chen studied her readings with a frown. "Difficult to tell. I'm detecting 12... something. Very faint. Not human, not any species in our database. Ship status? Power minimal," reported Tactical Officer Wong. "No weapon systems active. Most sections appear to be without life support. It's been adrift for decades, judging by the micrometeor. Impact patterns." Sojin stood studying the alien vessel. "Survivors after all this time?" "Possible," Chen replied, "if they have some form of stasis technology. But if that's the case, it's failing. These life signs are critically weak." Liu moved to stand beside. "Sojin, Captain, we don't know anything about their biology, their technology. Attempting a rescue could endanger our crew." "And doing nothing guarantees those beings die," Sujin countered. "Prepare a boarding team, environmental suits, full, medical kit, and engineers to assess their systems. And if they're hostile," Liu pressed. Sujin's expression softened slightly. "After 30 years adrift? I think they'll just be grateful, Liu." "I know I would be." As preparations began for boarding, the Thunderchild moved closer to the alien vessel, powerful spotlights illuminating its scarred hull. The crew watched the view screen in hushed anticipation, human and alien about to meet for the first time, not in war but in rescue. For Captain Sujin, standing tall on her bridge, the ghosts of Procyon seemed a little quieter now. This time they weren't too late. Daeho felt consciousness return, like a slow tide washing over him. First came sensation. The surface beneath him was neither the familiar contour of his stasis pod nor the traditional sleeping platforms of his homeworld. Then sound, a steady beeping, voices speaking in harsh, clipped tones unlike any language he knew. Finally sight. His inner eyelids parted reluctantly, then his outer ones revealing a world of strange angles and unfamiliar light. A face hovered above him, bipedal like his own species, but the similarities ended there. The creature was stockier, with a frame that suggested strength rather than the delicate build of Daeho's people. Its skin was darker than the pale blue of the Nurari, and its eyes, two of them instead of the three Daeho possessed, watched him with an intensity that felt both clinical and compassionate. "Heart rate increasing," another voice said from somewhere beyond Daeho's field of vision. "Brain activity normalizing." The figure above Daeho held up a small device that emitted a soft glow. "You're safe," it said, the words somehow transforming into sounds Daeho could understand. A translation device. "I'm Captain Kim of the human vessel Valiant." Human. The word echoed in Daeho's mind, triggering memories of ancient texts he'd studied. Humans, a species from a distant part of the galaxy known for their adaptability and aggression. Warriors, explorers, unpredictable. Most Nurari scholars considered them semi-mythical, like creatures from old stories told to frighten children. "Can you understand me, the human?" Captain Kim asked. Daeho tried to speak, but his throat felt raw from disuse. How long had he been in stasis? After a moment, he managed a raspy, "Yes." Relief flickered across the human's face, an expression surprisingly similar to how his own people showed emotion. "Good. You've been unconscious for a very long time. We found your ship adrift. You were the first we managed to stabilize." Memories came rushing back. The research mission, the stellar anomaly that had emitted unexpected radiation, the cascade failure of their ship's systems, the desperate decision to enter emergency stasis. "My crew?" Daeho asked, attempting to sit up. A gentle but firm hand eased him back down. This human was stronger than he expected. "Easy," Captain Kim said. "Your physiology is still adjusting. As for your people, we're working on reviving them now. Your stasis technology kept you alive, but it was failing. Another few months and the human didn't need to finish." Daeho understood. They had been on the edge of death. "How many?" he asked. "So far, 4 of you are stable. The others are still being treated. Your body chemistry is challenging for our medical systems." Another human appeared, this one wearing different clothing, perhaps indicating a specialized role. "Captain, the 5th one is responding to treatment. Neural patterns stabilizing." Captain Kim nodded. "Good work, Dr. Song." Daeho's third eye, specially adapted for sensing electromagnetic fields, detected unusual energy patterns throughout the room. The technology here was different from anything his people had developed, more robust, less elegant, but undeniably effective. "How did you find us?" Daeho asked. "Your distress beacon," Captain Kim explained. "Weak but still transmitting. We were passing through the sector after a disagreement with another species." Dr. Song made a sound that might have been laughter. "That's one way to describe a firefight with Corvashi raiders." Firefight. The word sent a chill through Daeho's weakened body. The Nurari had abandoned warfare centuries ago, finding it inefficient and counterproductive to scientific progress. Yet here he was, rescued by warriors. "Why?" Daeho asked. "Why save us? We are unknown to you." Captain Kim's expression changed, showing genuine surprise at the question. "Because you needed help," the human said, as if the answer was obvious. "That's what we do." Before Daeho could process this simple yet profound statement, more of his kind began to stir on nearby beds. Zin, the stellar physicist. Miyu, the xenobiologist. Their 3 eyes opening to the same strange new reality. Zin spoke first. Her, voice thin with fear. "Where are we? What happened?" "We're among humans," Daeho explained, finding his voice stronger now. "They rescued us." Miyu's eyes widened. "Humans? But they're—" An alarm cut through the room, harsh and insistent. The humans immediately tensed, their postures changing from caregivers to something else. Something trained for danger. Captain Kim touched a device on her wrist. "Bridge, report." A voice responded through the device. "Multiple contacts approaching. Captain, warship configuration. They've altered course directly toward us." "Weapon signatures detected. Identification?" Kim asked, her voice now sharper, more commanding. "Corvashi vessels. 5 of them. They've detected us." Daeho felt fear grip him anew. His people had heard of the Corvashi, a predatory species that claimed territory through force rather than negotiation. They attacked the weak, the isolated, the vulnerable. Captain Kim's eyes met Daeho's. In them, he saw not fear, but determination. "Your presence here makes us a target," the human said simply. "The Corvashi don't approve of other species helping each other, makes their conquest strategy more difficult." "Then leave us," Miyu said weakly. "Save yourselves." The suggestion seemed to offend the human captain. "That's not how this works. You're under our protection now. But why risk yourselves?" Daeho asked, genuinely confused. "You've already done more than anyone could expect." Captain Kim's expression softened slightly. "Because that's the difference between them and us. They prey on the weak. We defend them." The human turned to leave, then paused. "Rest. Regain your strength. Your people are safe aboard the Valiant." As the captain departed, Daeho exchanged glances with his fellow scientists. They had been rescued from certain death, only to find themselves in the middle of a conflict they didn't understand, protected by a species they had believed to be little more than legend. Through the walls of the medical bay, Daeho could feel the ship's engines changing tone, powering up, preparing for battle. The humans were going to fight. For them. For strangers. In that moment, despite the danger, Daeho felt something he hadn't experienced since before their ship had failed. Hope. Not just for survival, but for understanding something new about the universe and the diverse beings that inhabited it. The alarm continued its warning cry as the Valiant prepared to face what was coming. The main bridge of the Valiant hummed with tense energy as crew members prepared for the approaching threat. 5 Corvashi warships against 1 damaged human vessel. The odds weren't just bad, they were nearly impossible. Captain Kim stood tall despite the pressure, her weathered face illuminated by the tactical displays showing the enemy's approach. Vectors. Time to intercept? 17 minutes, Captain, replied Navigation Officer Priya, her fingers dancing across the controls. Weapon status? Tactical Officer Han grimaced. Portside railguns still offline, missile bays at 40% capacity. Main cannon operational but cooling systems compromised. We'll get 3 shots at most before risking an overload. Captain... Kim nodded calmly, as if these weren't the words that might seal their fate. The bridge doors slid open, and Executive Officer Liu entered with Dae-ho supported at his side. The Nurari scientist was still weak, his slender frame looking especially fragile among the humans, but his 3 eyes were alert and determined. He insisted, Liu explained. Said he might be able to help. Kim frowned. You should be resting with your people. My people wouldn't exist without you, Dae-ho replied, his voice stronger than before. His translator device gave his words a slightly mechanical quality, but the emotion behind them was unmistakable. You saved us when no one else would. Let us help you now. Unless you've got a battle fleet hidden somewhere, I'm not sure how, Kim said, though there was no unkindness in her tone. I have something better, Dae-ho said. Knowledge. He pulled a small data device from the pocket of the human medical gown he wore. Before our ship failed, we were studying an unusual stellar phenomenon in Sector 12 Gamma. The data we collected. I believe it could help you now. Chief Science Officer Yuna approached, taking the offered device with careful hands. What kind of phenomenon? A type of radiation pulse that interferes with certain sensor arrays and targeting systems, Dae-ho explained. We were studying it for its implications on deep space navigation, but it could blind enemy weapons, Yuna finished, her eyes widening as she reviewed the data. Captain, he's right. If we could replicate this signal pattern using our communication array... Could we? Kim asked. Yuna exchanged glances with Engineer Raj, who had moved to look over her shoulder. It would mean repurposing our emergency broadcast system, he said slowly. Risky. We'd be defenseless if it fails. We're nearly defenseless already, Kim pointed out. There's more, Dae-ho said. The phenomenon creates what we called shadow points, areas where the effect is significantly stronger. If a ship were positioned correctly relative to the source of the radiation, understanding dawned on Tactical Officer Han's face. We could create a blind spot, make ourselves nearly invisible to their targeting systems while still being able to fire on them. It's theoretical, Dae-ho admitted. My people never weaponized our research. We're scientists, not warriors. Kim studied the alien carefully. Fortunate for us that you're in the company of warriors now. She turned to her crew. Yuna, Raj, how quickly can you modify our systems to generate this radiation pattern? 15 minutes if we bypass safety protocols, Raj said. You have 12, Kim replied. And plot firing solutions that take advantage of these shadow points. Priya, I need a course that puts us in the optimal position when the Corvashi arrive. The bridge erupted into focused activity. Dae-ho watched in amazement as the humans worked. They didn't question the plan's unconventional nature or debate its ethics. They simply found ways to make it happen. Where his people would have formed committees and considered implications for days, these humans adapted in minutes. Your species moves quickly in a crisis, Dae-ho observed to Captain Kim. A small smile touched her lips. We've had practice. Earth wasn't always united. We spent centuries fighting each other before we turned our eyes to the stars. Yet you risk yourselves for strangers. Perhaps because we know the cost of not helping when we could have, she replied softly. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. On the view screen, the Corvashi ships grew from distant points of light to clearly visible warships, their hull designs aggressive even at rest, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Radiation emitter ready, Captain, Yuna announced with just 2 minutes to spare. Optimal position achieved, Priya added. Kim took a deep breath. Activate the emitter. All hands, battle stations. A low hum filled the ship as the modified communications array began broadcasting the Nurari radiation pattern. On the tactical display, concentric rings showed where the effect would be strongest. Enemy ships entering optimal range, Han reported. They're charging weapons. Everyone held their breath. If Daeho's research was wrong, or if the humans had implemented it incorrectly, they would know in the next 30 seconds when Corvashi energy weapons tore through their hull. They're firing, Han said. Daeho closed all three of his eyes, unable to watch, but instead of the expected impact, Han's voice came again, filled with disbelief. Miss! All shots missed by at least 200 meters. A cheer erupted from the crew. Kim silenced them with a raised hand. Don't celebrate yet. Han, target their lead vessel, main cannon. Target locked. Fire. The Valiant shuddered as its main weapon discharged, sending a lance of concentrated energy across space. On the view screen, they watched it strike the Corvashi. Lead ship with devastating precision, cutting through its forward section. Direct hit, Han reported. Their shields were completely ineffective. The radiation pattern disrupted their defense grid too. Target the second ship, Kim ordered. Fire when ready. Another blast, another hit. The Corvashi formation broke. Apart in confusion, their well-practiced battle maneuvers falling into chaos as their sensors failed to provide reliable targeting data. They're retreating, Liu said in disbelief as the enemy ships began to turn away. They're actually retreating. The bridge erupted in cheers again, and this time Kim let them celebrate. She turned to Daeho. Your research just saved 200 lives on this ship plus your own people. Daeho bowed his head slightly. Knowledge shared is knowledge improved. My people would have never seen the defensive applications. Sometimes it takes different minds to see the full picture. Later, as the Valiant limped toward human space with its precious cargo of rescued aliens, communications chatter spread the story across the fleet. How a lone human warship had answered a decades-old distress call that others had ignored. How they'd faced down 5 enemy vessels to protect strangers they'd just met. How scientific knowledge and military courage had combined to achieve the impossible. In the medical bay, now converted to temporary quarters for the Nurari scientists, Daeho sat with his rescued colleagues, explaining what had happened. I don't understand, said Miu, the xenobiologist. Why would they risk so much for us? It defies logical behavior patterns. Daeho's 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a Nurari expression of deep thought. I believe it's because humans don't see helping. Others as a calculation. For them, it's instinct. Meanwhile, in her private quarters, Captain Kim recorded her official report. Knowing the Admiralty would question her decisions, she would face reprimands, perhaps even lose her command. But as she looked at the images of the 12 Nurari scientists, alive, because her ship had answered their call, she couldn't bring herself to regret her choice. The Corvashi believe the galaxy belongs to the strong, she dictated into her log. Perhaps today we showed them that true strength lies not in the ability to take life, but in the willingness to preserve it whatever the cost. As word of the encounter spread among the stars, other species began to view humanity in a new light, not just as soldiers and explorers pushing into the galaxy with typical human boldness, but as something unexpected and rare. Defenders who would answer when called, even across the vast emptiness of space. The galaxy would never see humanity quite the same way again,